Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cracking the code on a truly rigorous, almost mathematical approach to sales by decoding Jordan Belfort's famous straight-line persuasion system. Look, this isn't about relying on luck or just having raw charisma. This is a highly structured framework designed to take all the guesswork out of persuasion and transform you into an ethical, absolute champion closer. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit the 3-10s framework, those crucial first 4 seconds, mastering tonality, the art of looping, closing the deal, and finally being an ethical closer. All right, part 1, the 3-10s framework. Before we even think about scripts, we've got to understand the core philosophy here. What actually makes a prospect say yes? Well, the bedrock metric of this system isn't just about nudging someone toward a sale. It's about absolute certainty. That's a psychological state where your buyer has literally zero doubts about moving forward with you. And to get to that absolute certainty, your prospect has to hit a perfect 10 out of 10 on a certainty scale. If they're sitting at a 7, or even an 8 or a 9, they're stuck in the maybe zone. And as we all know, a maybe never pulls the trigger. They need to be at a level 10. But here's the kicker. It's not just one 10 you're hunting for. You actually have to capture 3 distinct, completely non-negotiable 10s. First step, the product. They've got to believe your product is the absolute best thing on the market for their specific needs. Number 2, you. They have to trust you, the salesperson, implicitly. And 3, they need total faith in the company you represent. If even one of those elements is lagging, the whole deal stalls out. You only get that buying decision when all 3 hit a perfect 10 simultaneously. Moving on to part 2, the first 4 seconds. So we know the ultimate goal is capturing those 3 10s. Let's step onto the line and look at the absolute most critical moment of your pitch, the opening. You've got exactly 4 fleeting seconds. That's it. Whether you're on the phone or in person, you have 4 seconds to make an impression before the prospect's subconscious makes a snap judgment. This tiny little window of time will quite literally make or break your entire deal. In those 4 seconds, you must establish 3 specific traits instantly. You gotta sound sharp as a tack, enthusiastic as hell, and like an absolute expert in your field. Basically, a force to be reckoned with. If you fail to project that right out of the gate, the prospect decides you aren't worth their time, they take control, and they'll drag you right off the straight line and into a dead end. Which brings us to part 3, mastering sales tonality. So how in the world do you prove you're all those things in just 4 seconds, especially if you're just a voice on the phone? It's all about tonality. Old-school sales methods rely way too much on logic, but this system leans into a fundamental human truth. People buy on emotion and then justify their purchase with logic later. Your tonality is the master key that moves that emotional needle. Sure, your words matter, but how you say them creates a whole unconscious dialogue in your listener's head. You've got to practice these active tonal shifts. For instance, when you're pitching the logic of your product, you use a firm, booming, unwavering voice to project absolute certainty. But when a prospect gets hesitant, you shift. You drop down into a disarming, higher-pitched whisper. This is the money aside tone, designed to isolate an objection and show the client you actually care and understand their concerns. All right, part 4, the art of looping. Look, no matter how flawless your tonality is, eventually a prospect is going to hit you with an objection. Average salespeople will just wing it. They answer the objection directly, lose control of the conversation, and go completely off track. But not you. With this framework, when you hit a roadblock, you don't keep blindly pushing forward. You stop, you deflect, you loop backwards on the line, and you recapture those 3 10s. The rule of thumb here is actually fascinating. The very first objection you hear, it's almost always a smokescreen. They aren't really objecting to the price or the timing. They're objecting because they aren't at a 10 on one of those 3 core scales we talked about earlier. So the second you hear objection number 1, you trigger your first backward loop. How exactly do you do that? You use an offsetting language pattern. You acknowledge their concern, smoothly bypass it, and ask something like, I hear what you're saying, but let me ask you a question. Does the idea make sense to you? See what happened there? You completely deflected the specific complaint to find out if the core logical idea actually resonates. If they say yes, you start systematically running 3 increasingly tight loops. In loop 1, you're reselling the logical and emotional case for the product, yourself, and the company. If they object again, you handle it and move into loop 2, future pacing, where you paint a vivid, amazing, emotional picture of their future using your product. Still blocked? You hit loop 3, amplifying pain. Here you focus on the negative consequences of them doing absolutely nothing. You just keep repeating this until their action threshold, that internal tipping point, drops, and buying simply becomes the only logical outcome. Now for part 5, closing the sale. Once you've successfully looped back, knocked out the negatives, built up the positives, and captured absolute certainty across all 3 tens, it is climax time. Notice the boundaries of this framework. By gathering intelligence, building rapport with the right tone, and using your loops to stay within the boundaries, you have elegantly guided your prospect right down the line to the promised land, the close. But here's a crazy fact for you. So many salespeople do all this heavy lifting and then literally forget the final step. Your prospect isn't just going to eagerly volunteer to hand over their money. It's against human nature to willingly part with cash. They're waiting for your cue. You must confidently ask for the order using a practical, low-pressure close, like, "Believe me, if you do even half as well as the rest of my clients, you're going to be very, very impressed." Sound fair enough?
Finally, part 6, the ethical closer.
Before we wrap up this explainer, we need a serious reality check about the very real boundaries of elite, high-level selling. The creator of this system, Jordan Belfort, puts a stark warning right in his checklist. Because this straight-line system relies heavily on human psychology, it is incredibly effective at lowering action thresholds, meaning it will absolutely work to sell bad products to people who shouldn't buy them. But the sources are crystal clear on this. Doing that means you lose your soul, and when the complaints roll in, you could very well end up in jail. Your ultimate mandate, the entire foundation of your inner game, is to use this methodology ethically. You have to genuinely like people. Your job is to push prospects past their own limiting beliefs only to help them buy things that actually solve their problems and serve their greater good. Simply put, if you aren't absolutely certain your product is the best thing for them, you have no business pitching it. So we've covered the 3 tenets, those vital first 4 seconds, the magic of tonality, and the strategy of looping. The next time you pick up that phone to talk to a prospect, you really have to ask yourself, are you going to wing it and leave the deal up to chance? Or are you ready to take total control, build absolute certainty, and become a true, ethical champion closer? Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.